If you find yourself feeling awkward and anxious on the first few dates with somebody, of course you do. This is a vulnerable place to be, putting yourself out there with someone who's basically a stranger. There are anxieties and expectations both of you bring to the table. So I want to help you simplify it once and for all and get out of your head and into the experience. It's a simple framework that I call Vibe, Dive, Decide. The first date, all about vibes. To create those vibes, I suggest you do something you already know you enjoy doing, something you would vibe with your friends doing. If you get together with your friends and sip on drinks while you just talk for 2 hours, then of course it's reasonable to suggest a cocktail for the first date. But if not, if you'd rather hang out with your friends walking around the park, getting ice cream, or even going on a hike or doing some other activity, that's what you should suggest for the first date. This gives you a couple of advantages. First, it gives you something to talk about with this person other than each other. These basic facts of what do you do, what do you like, this stuff will come up in conversation, and it puts that conversation in the context of something more playful and more exploratory, which is the purpose of these first dates, is to explore each other. It also gives you a certain level of comfort knowing that you're gonna enjoy yourself even if there's not a whole lot of connection. After the first date, if you couldn't drop into that playful vibe together, you get to ask yourself, do I want to go for a second date or do I want to call it good? The second date is where you dive in. You're still bringing that playful and curious energy, still doing something you know you both enjoy together, and there's a little bit more focus on hearing each other talk. Now, asking a bit more insightful questions. Since our last date, or over the past month, what's one thing for us to celebrate together? And one challenge that you've been facing. You get to really dig into who this person is and the inner workings of this person you're on a date with, and therefore you get a pretty good feel for ongoing compatibility. After the second date, if you couldn't get to a level of depth that you wanted, that felt right, that felt intriguing and left you wanting more, then you get to ask yourself, do I want a third date or do I call it good? A third date is where you decide. This is crucial because you're still enjoying each other's company, you've built up enough connection and chemistry at this point to want a third date, and now you're just making time to look each other in the eye and ask the important questions and have the important conversation. The very classic example, what are you looking for in dating in a relationship? Here's what I'm looking for. And we get to see how well this aligns. It doesn't need to align perfectly, but you get to explore that together. 2 other questions I want to suggest for you to really get at some depth and some important information for deciding whether to continue. What's something you've reflected on from our first 2 dates? You get to see how those experiences are sitting with that person, and do you know your attachment style? Very crucially, if the person does not have clear answers to any of these questions, that's okay. What you're looking for is a willingness to engage in these important topics, in this important conversation about should we keep going? How aligned are we for an ongoing relationship? After the third date, you will then have all of the clarity and information that you need. At that point, the last thing to do is trust yourself.